If you're anything like me, your New Year's resolutions may fall away by middle of January, end of January, maybe middle of Feb at the best of times. And that might be down to a lack of commitment rather than a lack of motivation for whatever your New Year's resolution was. In this video, I'm going to use the same concept from a book that I've just read and apply that to how it might be impacting things within your own family business. My name is Russ Hayworth. I'm a family business advisor and I provide consultancy support to family businesses, helping them navigate the complexities that come from being in business together. Now, as you may be able to tell from the bookcase behind me, I love reading, but I also love listening to audiobooks. And the audiobook I'm listening to at the moment is called The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters. It's a fantastic book. If you get the chance to either read it or download it, I recommend it. And the premise of the book is essentially that we have two conflicting brains that are working with us at any given time. That is the human brain, which is inherently built on logic, and the chimp brain, which is far more emotionally driven. Alongside that, we have our computer, which is where all the information is stored. And depending on whether it's the chimp or the human that takes the information from that computer, depends on the outcome of many of the situations we find ourselves in. One of the topics in the book that really resonated with me was motivation versus commitment. This is something that I see in my own life, but also with the families that I'm working with when we're talking about bringing in change or having difficult conversations about certain aspects of being in business with your family. So motivation is emotionally driven. It is a feeling, and it can often be a good feeling or a bad feeling. So in the example of the work that I do with families, it could be, say, a pain point around succession planning. Somebody in the senior generation is not willing to have discussions around the future ownership or management of the business. Or it can be a good thing. You as a family want to gather everything together around a single family charter or family constitution and drive your business forward together. There's a motivation for doing that because it is emotionally driven. The challenge that you have around motivation, and this is something that is covered in the book really well, is that because it is emotionally driven, it may not always be there. In that case, you need commitment, which is based within the human brain rather than the chimp brain. Because it's based on the human brain, it is logical and it makes perfect sense. And a prime example of this from my own life is a few years ago, my fellow members of Round Table decided that we would ride from Land's End to John O'Groats for charity. Now, I'm not a cyclist. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not a cyclist, but I was motivated to do it because it was a fantastic cause. We're raising money for a great charity, and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to cycle the length of the United Kingdom. I was motivated to complete that journey. What was also important, though, is that I was committed to the training, and I was committed to doing it no matter how much it hurt on day 1, 3, 10, however many days it took me to do. The important thing was that I was both motivated and, more importantly, committed on those days where it was raining and blowing a hoolie outside the window, to be able to get up and do the training before I would normally have been awake anyway. That is the level of commitment that was needed in order to see out that particular task. And that's the difference we're talking about here, is the motivation is the emotional driver to get things done, and commitment is what you then need to see that through. So in your family business, you may be motivated to do certain things. You may be motivated to take on the challenge of succession, but it may also be that there are barriers and obstacles in the way when that motivation falls out the way and you're left with a lack of commitment. What I often find as well is that there are individuals within the family that are more motivated, or perhaps experiencing pain more than others, and are therefore more motivated to make the changes within the family business that they're operating within. I'm often asked what happens if there are others within that family system that are not as motivated to see through the changes that are needed in order to drive the business forward. Now, that can be very complex, and there's no real off-the-shelf answer for that. But one of the things that I look for in the families that I'm working with is at least a commitment from everybody to embrace the process that we're about to go on. There will be times where it gets difficult. There will be complicated conversations. There may well be emotional conversations that are involved in that. And so having that commitment, even when it gets tough, is more important than the motivation necessarily needed to start that conversation. So if you find yourself in a position where you are the one that is primarily motivated to make change within your business, the best thing that I think you can do is to speak to everybody else to at least get them to commit to opening the door to that process, rather than thinking that everybody has to be as equally motivated as you are for seeing that change. What Professor Steve Peters, who wrote the book, suggests is that you have certain things in place to deal with what happens when that motivation moves away or wanes for a couple of days, weeks, months, however long it might be. The first thing that he suggests is listing out what it is you will need in order to complete that process, that change, whatever it is you're looking to do. What will you need in order to complete that? You may need legal help. You may need external help from a facilitator such as myself to help those discussions to continue, even though they might get tough. So as a family, if you are looking to make changes within your family business to make things easier or to start the discussions around succession planning, you firstly need the motivation in order to be able to realize that that's the case. But more importantly, you need the commitment in order to see that through. And it's the commitment and the determination to keep going even when times get tough that will see the best results, rather than just relying on when the emotional, motivational factors are present. I hope that's been useful. And if there's any way I can help with your own family business, please do get in touch. Until next time, take care.